Working with people on different sectors in society and explaining Islam to them.
A person from a different faith, invite them to break their fast.
Understand the landscape of society.
If someone wants to try to do something, then they can, for sake of dawah, for sake of humanity.
When you sit down with somebody and you want to hear about who they are sincerely, that breaks down barriers.
We're going to move on to another organization, and their name is Inspiring Grace. So they're active in community engagement, educating the masses about Islam, also active in educating Muslims about Islamic sciences, and also non-Muslims about the basics and inviting them to Islam. So we have a representative, Tahir Anwar, from Inspiring Grace. So if you would be most kind to welcome the brother up to the stage.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wal aqibatu lil muttaqeen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya'i wal mursaleen. Sayyidina wa habibina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Allahumma la ilma illa ma 'allamtana innaka antal alim hakim wa zidna ilma. Alhamdulillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. First and foremost, I'd like to thank Sidhu Ghulam and the others, mashallah, the organizers of this beautiful event, for inviting me to speak for a few moments. The other thing, it's been really positive. I've been here since around 2 o'clock, and it's been really positive to hear the different voices of the Muslim community and different people involved in different areas, and how essentially everybody is giving the same message. MashaAllah, I think for me, it's really filling my heart with hope that there's a positive future moving forward for Muslims within the UK, despite the negativity and despite the obvious outward obstacles that faces, that inwardly, inshallah ta'ala, there's a turning back towards the beautiful example of the Prophet ﷺ and trying to become people of social energy. Inshallah, I want to introduce a little bit about a project that we're doing, which is a mobile food bank within the Nelson, Burnley and Pendle area. Before I talk about the project, I just want to give some general thoughts on the topic, which is da'wah itself, rethinking da'wah and what da'wah means. I just want to mention a quote here from somebody, and Hakim Salim Khan, who was a well-known herbal doctor who resides in Leicester, but he's also a man of deep wisdom in other areas too, as his title suggests. And he said that he was a person who wanted to give da'wah from a young age when he moved to the UK. And he said that he would approach many organizations and ask them for advice on how he could give da'wah. And what he found interesting was that people were not doing research into da'wah. He said there was nobody he found who had written a book or done a study into the mind, the psychology of the Europeans, or the psychology of British people. Yeah, so the advice that he gave us was, go out there and understand who the people are that you're engaging with. Before you go ahead and start running projects and start providing different services, have a think, who are you actually engaging with, and what are these people like? And some of the pointers that he gave us was these bottom two. That first and foremost, the British people in general, they dislike being preached at. And this is the world in general. People don't like being told what to do. People don't like being told that they're wrong, or that this is the way you should be doing something. Yeah, this certainly wasn't the way of the Prophet ﷺ, and it certainly is not going to be effective with the society that we're in now, that people dislike being told what to do. And the second point that he made was that we're now dealing with a very complex society. Yeah, that the needs of people are very, very complex and diverse. So to go in and maybe speak to somebody about Islam face to face is just scratching the surface. People have a range of different problems. That's one of the things we do at Inspiring Grace, is we now have like a counseling and a mediation service for Muslims and non-Muslims alike. And so Muslims and non-Muslims can come in and talk about their problems, talk about the problems they have in their marriage, in their family life, in a work environment, maybe racial issues, whatever it might be, to try and go beyond the surface of just having that superficial interaction, which mashallah has benefit, but we need to sort of start to move beyond that. What we decided then to look at is, okay, then how do we match this up with the Prophet ﷺ? So we've looked now at the social context that we're in. How then do we match this up with what the seerah, the blessed seerah, the blessed life of the Prophet ﷺ, which undoubtedly provides answers to any problem, any situation that we're in. And one of the first things that we realized was that the Prophet ﷺ adopted a nuanced approach. Yeah? He adopted an approach that was tailored to individuals first and foremost. So we know the well-known story of Musa ibn Umayd when he went and opened up Medina, the blessed city of Medina, before the Prophet ﷺ came. And then when the Prophet ﷺ arrived and he would talk to people, Musa was there as an advisor. So as people would come in, he would explain, this is so-and-so, this is his background, he's a chief of this tribe, or this is so-and-so, or she's a widow, she's got this problem, this is someone else. So he would give a breakdown, and then Prophet ﷺ would talk according to the level of that person. So it was a very nuanced approach. It wasn't like a tape recorder of giving the same message to every person, that he would assess psychologically who a person was, what their state was, and then deliver the message accordingly. And also it was holistic too. This is something that we find out particularly with new Muslims, is that a lot of new Muslims coming in, they're really struggling financially. We know, we got our brother Ahmad here who sports a lot with new Muslims across the Lancashire area, that there's people out there who've got problems with drugs, they've got problems with being in chaotic, sort of domestic violence type relationships, really, really difficult situations that they're in. So the solutions you then give them have to be holistic as well. They have to involve of some kind of financial support oftentimes as well. And then the final point that we realize, if you look at the example of the Prophet ﷺ, is that the deen of Islam spread through the poor. And like with every prophet before him, the Prophet ﷺ's message was initially accepted by people who were destitute or poor or in difficult situations. That he came to speak to the marginalized and speak to the outcasts within society. And if there's no doubt, I have no doubt in my mind, if Prophet ﷺ was alive today, that's where he would be. He would be on the street. He would be with people that we would maybe not even look at. He'd be with people, like for example, we've got women now who are selling their bodies on the street in order to make ends meet. That's the kind of people the Prophet will be going to give da'wah to. He'd be going to give da'wah to those people who are walking around whispering to themselves who have gone maybe mentally insane. Yeah, this is the kind of thing. These are the kind of people that he would look at. So what we therefore, the conclusion we came through was that we need to give da'wah through khidmah. Yeah, that the real most effective way that we can give da'wah is through serving other people and developing relationships as a result of that. Like is mentioned in the hadith there, that the deen is relationships ultimately. And to build those relationships through khidmah. So we give and we don't ask for anything in return. And we continue to give without expecting anything in return. And eventually that leads to a loving relationship. We know one of the main reasons why people love another person is because you do good to them. Ihsan. If you do good to somebody else, then inshallah ta'ala that's going to allow you to then become a person who's going to become endeared in the hearts of others. So we did that, and we thought we need to look at an area where we can excel. And the area that we particularly chose was the aspect of feeding people. Yeah, this hadith which was mentioned before, when the Prophet ﷺ first entered Medina, and he said, spread peace, feed people, maintain kinship ties in one narration, and pray in the night whilst others sleep. So we thought feeding people is going to be the way, inshallah ta'ala, the vehicle we are going to use to now try to propagate the message of Islam in a positive way. So we set up this project which was called Feeding Pendle and Beyond. The aim of the project initially was just to collect food and go and deliver it out to different outlets and help people to basically feed themselves. This then developed into what's now known as a mobile food bank, where we will now go out to different areas and actually drop off food at people's houses and actually allow them to be able to continue to sustain themselves in some kind of way. And we get these referrals via different agencies, via different charities and governmental agencies, or people within our community who are in need, neighbors, Muslims, non-Muslims alike, who are in need, and then we then deliver these parcels to them. And as a result of that, we've been able to develop relationships. Yeah, we've developed relationships with the users themselves, those people who are actually taking the food. We've also developed relationships with charity organizations who we are working with, governmental organizations, and who have then come to appreciate the fact that we're here for the long run and we're here just to give out just for the sake of giving. We don't have any ulterior motive. We're not expecting anything back in return from people, inshallah. So that's essentially what we've done. I just want to finish now on looking at how we develop this further. So initially we've started off and we're giving food to people. We've then built on that. And one of the first ways we built on it is through education. We've now been inviting non-Muslims in to give them information about what's the Islamic perspective on feeding the poor, what's the Islamic perspective on charity, so they can start to see the characteristics of the Prophet ﷺ, how he came to perfect noble character and charity being one of the highest of those. So we're educating people through that. We've also started now doing cookery classes for those within our community who are struggling financially and also don't know how to cook. So this again is based on the prophetic idea of self-sufficiency. We don't just give somebody the food and then leave them to it. We're teaching them the tools to become self-sufficient. Like the man who came to the Prophet ﷺ and had no money, what did the Prophet ﷺ do? He bought him an axe. And then he told him, go and chop wood and go and start selling that wood. And then he came back a few months later and the man's in employment, he's in business, mashallah. He was able to look after his own needs. He didn't need to go back to the food parcel people, back to the Prophet asking for more food. And the other thing that we're now looking to establish is a hot food kitchen. And this is important to try to establish relationships with people. One of the best ways to do that is through sharing food, as was mentioned earlier. So inshallah, we can share food and start to break some of the barriers down with non-Muslims. And then finally, we've done this and we continue to do this, is to work with a wider variety of agencies. So not just work with charities or the government, but also work with businesses, work with the masajid, of all different areas and all different denominations, such that we're also trying to bring Muslims together as well. Because there's one thing that Muslims inshallah can agree on, is that feeding the poor is an imperative within our tradition, no matter what our background or our school of thought might be. So it's trying to bring the masajid together, and it's also trying to bring schools, bring some of the youngsters onto this as well, inshallah. So in 10 years time, 15 years time, we have a larger group of Muslims and non-Muslims who are voluntarily trying to eradicate the problem of poverty. Jazakumullah khairan for your time, inshallah. We ask Allah for tawfiq. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad.
Right, okay, so just to introduce our panel to you, on the far side we have Ghulam Haider from the Myriad Foundation. Then we have Jamshed Junaid, who runs a number of dawah organizations in South Wales. We then have Salahuddin Patel from IQRA. We then have Tahir from Inspiring Grace. We then have Brother Sohail from IDC Northeast. And we have Brother Nanu from Share Ramadan. Okay, so the first question to you guys. Do you see a forum where several organizations come together actually working? How can this be done? And what is your vision regarding this?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakumullah khair for taking the time to stay, first and foremost, because I do know that this is normally the graveyard shift when it comes to conferences. Everyone's eaten and ready to go home after a long and tiring day. I'm probably looking forward to the highlights of Manchester United versus Liverpool as well, inshallah. So I think a forum only really works when we're doing it first and foremost with sincerity. Because if we don't have the sincerity, and we're doing it for our egos, and we're doing it for name and glory, etc., it's never going to work. It's never going to work because we're off on the wrong setting. So that's the first thing. The way that I see it working is that if it is a forum where everyone has an equal say, they're able to bring ideas to the table and discuss, formulate, strategize, share best practices, because it's not going to be an organization where someone's actually dictating how dawah should be done, because end of the day there's so many, mashallah, brothers and sisters, just like to emphasize with sisters as well, is that they have some fantastic ideas, and these voices need to be heard, and it's only through discussion and dialogue and that we can come to best practices. And even just this conference that we've had today, the only reason we've been able to have it is because between ourselves there's been some discussions behind the scenes, and we know each other's strengths. So now all it is putting it out there on a bigger platform and being able to include more people that are involved in the dawah, so we can have more voices, and we can better strategize our dawah, and we can replicate good initiatives all over the country. For example, we have Inspiring Grace that have got some fantastic initiatives. Maybe they can write this up into a document. Maybe they can train other organizations into delivering this in their own locality. Likewise with IDC, likewise with IQRA, ourselves, Myriad Foundation, or even the organizations in South Wales. So this is how I envisage it anyway. I don't know what the rest of you guys think, but that's my sort of 2 pence.
Jazakallah khair. Does anybody else want to add anything onto that? Go ahead.
Bismillah. I just wanted to echo the sentiments expressed by Ghulam, that I think the best way this is going to work is for people to come up with some type of idea of sharing best practice. So I think that there's no doubt all of us here, we've all got different areas and different projects that we've developed. So in order for me to now start a new project and learn the ropes and make mistakes and then come back and then improve, I could cut all that out and stop wasting that particular period of time by coming to, for example, IDC, and then they teach me, well, why don't you just do like this? And it's just a much more efficient and quicker way to learn a thing. So I don't, like Ghulam said, it's not about one person being a leader or somebody telling what to do. It's just about trying to get to the end goal as quickly as we can. And the end goal is to come up with some kind of solution to the problems that we face around us for the sake of Allah, really.
Just to add to that, I think what's very important, I think every single one of us needs to understand one thing, and it's something, everyone listening about this, yeah? Such an important thing is that the dawah is bigger than any organization. The dawah is bigger than your organization or your personalities or your celebrities or whoever they are. What matters is the dawah, okay? So if people are sincere, and if we can all work sincerely together, then I don't see any problem with it. Everyone should be working like-minded, and that the dawah is what's important, not your organization, not your ego, not your pride or anything like that. It's the dawah. Jazakallah khair.
Jazakallah khair. Okay, so the next question, I mean, there's two questions here, but I'm going to kind of merge them into one. Basically saying that there's a widespread inferiority complex amongst Muslims, and this is unfortunate. And it's in the West, and how can we overcome this? And is this also the reason why we have very small media political representation as well? Could these two things be linked? So would anybody like to take on this question?
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. So Jazakallah khairan for the question. Okay, I do believe that there is a certain degree of an inferiority complex with regards to Muslims, in that we've become scared. And this is something, unfortunately, that I've experienced with my own community, that we're scared now of actually being Muslim. We're scared now for speaking up for our own rights. We're scared now to stand up for what it is that Islam teaches. And why is that? It's because we have a lack of ignorance, basically. We have a lack of knowledge about our own deen. We have a lack of knowledge about what it means to be just. We don't know what it is to be Muslims in the true sense of being a Muslim anymore. That's why when people come to us and say, look, do you believe in this? Do you believe in that? Do you believe in all of these abhorrent things? We look inwardly, and obviously we know that the question's framed incorrectly, but we lack the knowledge and the ability to articulate the response correctly, and we also lack the knowledge and political awareness to be able to challenge the questioner on, in fact, their own beliefs. For example, the media are always asking the Muslim representatives, oh, what do you believe about, for example, suicide bombings and this, that, and the other? Well, fine, obviously we don't believe in unjustified killings, but the questioner themselves, and we are too shy to ask this, but the questioner themselves should also then have the guts to stand up and say, that whatever the governments are doing, respectively around the world, in doing that on a larger scale, is also abhorrent. You see, why is it a case of that we're always missing out the bigger picture, and we're just answering for our own small selective part that actually doesn't even have anything to do with Islam? The problem is because we just don't take the time either to educate ourselves or to take part in it. We've got this inferiority complex where somebody else has to do it. The problem is, brothers and sisters, that somebody else isn't there. MashaAllah, we have some organizations that are doing some amazing work, but they need support. And at the end of the day, they're few in number. We as an ummah, we make up approximately 1/5 to 1/4 of the world's population. Yet our weight is like the foam on the sea. And why is that? That's because we don't give ourselves the voice. We don't actually take part in any activities. We've closed ourselves off. Essentially, everything that's happening, personally, I believe that this is due to our own lack of participation on the wider arena. That's something definitely that we need to address. And unless we start becoming more politically savvy, more involved in the media, more engaged with the wider community, then definitely we're going to have, this is just going to be an ongoing issue for Muslims. I just want to give one final example with the companions. After the passing of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, let's have a look at where did a majority of the Sahaba pass away. And you have a look, and it's all around the world. all around the world. Very, very few stayed in Medina. Why? Because they went out, they engaged with the communities around them, and they went and they started passing the message. We've now turned away from that. We've started looking inwards. We've segregated ourselves to our own communities and we don't engage. And that's where the downfall starts to happen, because people don't know what it is, what a Muslim is, what they believe in, and what it's like to interact with them. So, Jazakallah khairan.
Okay, we've got a question on the microphone from someone over there.
The question is, how will we as Muslims from other communities and also as women Muslims be integrated, and also to have women speakers who can come and also inspire and give dawah in the future?
Jazakallah khair. That's a good question, actually. So how can we bring more integration into the Muslim community and get more women speakers involved as well? So who would like to take this on?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Yeah, and I think both aspects are really important. And I think that essentially when we're looking at these kind of problems, we really need to return back to the seerah of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. I think there's been a sort of a real disconnect with that. I mean, I don't necessarily, from where I'm from, it's very much a dominant Asian area. But the interactions I've had with people in Manchester and other areas, I don't personally believe that there is an issue. I've been to a lot of masajid where there's very much like a wide representation of different races. So I don't think that we necessarily need to maybe go down the Christian route of having like a black church and then an Asian church, anything like that. I think the mosques are pretty well integrated. Know that there's more work that needs to be done, but that just needs to be done by education, as with everything else. In terms of the issue of women, I think that is something for me personally, it's a big issue. And I think that it's got to begin first and foremost with women being able to enter the masajid and being able to not only just take part in the daily prayers, but also getting real access to education. This is absolutely essential. This is a really, really big problem where I'm from in Nelson and Burnley, that women just aren't getting any type of access to education, and therefore they're sort of really feeling as if they've got nowhere else to go, because their husbands aren't teaching them anything. Their husbands don't have the ability to even teach them Farz al-Ain, and as a result they're not able to go out there. So we need to have more programs that invite women in, like this one, mashallah ta'ala, and that activity needs to continue. But particularly the masjids, they need to change their attitudes. They need to recognize the social context that they're living in, and need to start letting women in and start actually not just giving women a room, like a small corner at the back of the mosque, but giving women a nice, comfortable place, making the women's area of the mosque being the best, the most accessible and the most comfortable place, and let men experience some of the hardship, and let women have some of the easy places within the masjid, inshallah.
Just very quickly, sister, to answer your question, I think the answer is very simple. The answer is we have an organization that caters for men and women, brothers and sisters, people of all ages, races. That's all we need is that. It's that simple. Organizations that are able to do that. And for example, our organization in the Northeast, we have men, women from all different races, and that's the point. And I honestly believe that every single person plays a part in the dawah. So whatever you can play a part in, however you can play a part in the dawah, even the children can play a part in the dawah. So that's what we all need to understand. Again, like I said, the dawah is bigger than all of us. It's bigger than egos, it's bigger than personalities, and it transcends all of that. So that's simply what I would say is, have an organization that does that, and that's all we need.
Just a quick question here while you've got the mic. It says, now that you're doing a project on the elderly, what about the orphans?
Are we working with, we haven't got anything in place at the moment, but inshallah, in the future, it's something that we're definitely looking into. See, this is the kind of thing that we need as well, because all our projects and all our ideas come from our volunteers. All of our volunteers chip in and say, you know what about this idea? And we build on it, we expand upon it, and that's the point. That's the point, is where we can all come together, like sort of like a dawah forum type of thing. That might be a good idea. So why not? This is the whole point. We can share good practice. We can bring ideas to the table and see how we will move forward with these ideas. And inshallah, that's the point how we move forward.
Okay, jazakallah khair. We're gonna have to come to a close on the Q&A panel, and this also brings us to a close for this conference. So I'd like to say jazakallah khair to all the panelists here for your time and your input. And I'd like to say jazakallah khair to everybody who's come out today, or whoever is left here in the crowd. Inshallah, please do get in touch with us and give us some feedback on what you thought were the good points, what you didn't quite like. We'd be more than happy to hear from yourselves. So I wish you a safe journey back, and jazakallah khair for coming. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.